Hi everyone, I'm Katie Evans with the Living48 real estate team here at Keller Williams Realty East Valley. And today I am here to answer some of the questions that we've been getting recently about the differences between the 2008 real estate market and today's market in 2018. We've had a lot of people who've been trying to compare and contrast the 2 years, and there's quite a few differences, but there's a few similarities as well. So we want to address some of those and hopefully help bring you guys to an understanding that 2018 is not 2008, and we are not expecting a repeat of what we saw then. So one of the first differences that we saw versus 2018 versus 2008 is the demand. If you all will recall, back in 2008, demand levels were at almost, I'm going to call them a frenzied rate. We had people buying multiple houses with the intent of flipping those homes to make a lot of money. And that had worked pretty well up to that point. However, when the bottom fell out of lending and the values of the homes all fell out and everything, we had a bunch of people who owned real estate at prices that they no longer were valued at. And so we had a lot of challenges of that. And then of course we saw the strategic short sales, the strategic foreclosures that were all a part of that great housing crash. So the difference between 2008 and the demand of 2018 is that it's very different. The demand is not the same as it was then. We don't have people frenzied buying things. And quite frankly, one of the other differences between the two is the levels of inventory that we have. So you'll recall back in 2008 that we had builders building homes hand over fist, and that there was just so much inventory flooding into the market at that point. Again, when the bottom fell out, everything was sitting there. In Arizona, what we had is a lot of our labor force left. And so now one of the major differences in 2018 is our home buyers or our home builders are not building at the levels or in the ways that they were building in the 2008 time period. Our labor force has gone, and all of the cost of construction has gone up substantially. So our builders are not building the way that they were back then. So we don't have the inventory. Another inventory problem that we have is that the homeowner cycle is different. It used to be that our homeowners here would cycle through a home about every 7 years. So I could expect that if you owned a home, about every 7 years, you would buy a new home. Since the Great Recession, that number has changed a lot, actually. It's upwards of 10 to 12 years is that homeowner cycle now. So people are not selling their homes the way that they were. And because of that, in 2018, we have extremely limited inventory, especially here in Arizona. Another thing that we see is a big kind of difference, and yet it's also being called the similarity, are some of the loan products. Now, back in 2008, we had loan products where if you just verbally said, this is how much money I make, this is what I can afford to spend, lenders were giving you that money. Today, that is no longer the case. You have to document everything. There is truth in lending. We've had all kinds of regulations, all kinds of laws, all kinds of everything happening. There is some concern because some of the subprime lending is coming back. But one of the biggest differences between lending practices today and lending practices back in 2008 are the credit score requirements. So I wanted to share you guys some information about that. In 2018, if you have a credit score below 620, you're going to find it very difficult to find lending in the market today. So at the peak of the housing boom, we were actually seeing borrowers with a credit score of as low as like 500 qualifying for some of the lowest FHA borrowers. So they were being able to qualify for FHA loans. If you had a credit score of like 620 to 640, you could qualify for the lowest interest rates on a conventional loan. By contrast, now in July of 2018, according to Ellie Mae, and she's a mortgage analytics company, 70% of borrowers had a FICO score of more than 700. And the average FICO score for conventional loans with the home purchase in July of 2018 was 751. So we've got more than like 100 points improvement in credit scores on anyone who is qualifying for a home loan. So that is something that is going to keep that in check long term. We're also having concerns about rapid price inflation and appreciation in housing prices right now. And people are comparing that to the rapid appreciation that we saw in 2008. What we need to remind everyone is that with the Great Recession, we saw those rates go sky high and then they plummeted. And now they've built back up. And if you take the recession out of the graph, you will see that we are actually on the perfect trajectory. We're right back on track of where we would have expected to be for our housing level value. So we really are not off base in that. And it wasn't artificially induced this time. This was a regular recovery. This is what we would have expected to see. And the last thing that I want to share with you guys about the similarities and the differences, a lot of people kind of feel like, oh, with the Great Recession, nobody wants to own a home anymore anyway. And I actually want to kind of check that with you, because 2004 was when we had our peak of home ownership rates, and we peaked out at 69.2% of home ownership, all right? And then in 2016, we actually dipped to our lowest at 62.9%, and this is according to the Census Bureau. Rates have actually slowly been climbing over the last couple of years, and in the second quarter of 2018, we are now back to 64.3%. So we're not quite back up to those record highs that we were at, but we are still here. So there's some lingering nerves. People are a little bit nervous if they weren't affected by the recession. They definitely knew somebody who was affected by the recession, and they didn't want to do that. But we're finding that most borrowers and real estate agents and lenders, we're all a little bit smarter. We're a little bit wiser. We're not encouraging our buyers to go buy the biggest, most expensive home that they could possibly qualify for. We're talking about monthly budgeting. We're steering people towards making good choices, which I think is a huge difference in the market today. All right, so mindset of the buyer has definitely changed, and that is one of the biggest differences that we are seeing in the market right now compared to 2008. But I did want to share with you guys this one little statistic. This is from Chris Herbert, who is the managing director of the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University. And he had to say 90% or so of renters still want to become homeowners. Certainly, young people are moving into home ownership more slowly, but that's because of a host of reasons, such as marrying and having children later, a reduced ability to save since the recession, and that it's harder to get a loan. It's not because of the fundamental change in attitude. So home ownership still is something that people are desiring. The millennials still want to own a home, and there's all kinds of different things. But the rising demand among our millennials, actually, they've got good employment, they've got everything, but what's happening is they're bumping into that ceiling of low inventory. And so because of that, we've got some affordability issues, we've got the low inventory issues, we've got all those things that are keeping values high. And that is one of the biggest differences between 2008 and 2018, is it's just a totally different set of circumstances. Yes, our home values are back up high. Yes, there are still some bad lending practices in play. There's some better regulations over those lending practices, but it's just a different set of circumstances. So the big thing that's going to keep our values from falling or doing anything else, and this is kind of our bottom line, our final word on this, is that we do not have the glut of inventory that we had back in 2008. And because of that, our values are not going to come tumbling down. We're not going to see a huge housing bubble burst. There just is no housing bubble. So hopefully that helps you guys. Hopefully that answers a few of your questions, makes your heart feel a little bit better. But we're here to answer any questions that you have specifically. Again, I'm an expert here in the Arizona real estate market and not in other markets. It's Arizona that I know. So if you have any questions for a market outside of that, I'm happy to connect you with an expert there. But I am here to help you with any of your Arizona real estate questions. So thank you for watching this video. Again, if we can ever be a help or a resource to you, give us a holler, reach out to us. I'm Katie at the Living48 real estate team at Keller Williams Realty East Valley. Thanks so much.